thank you for joining us, everybody who's out there on the internet and from joining us from many places across the globe. So I want to kick off by bookending a couple of things. So the first thing that I want to mention is our own personal mission. So when I say our mission, this is our Lightspeed mission. So those of you who might not be that familiar with our company, welcome. But in times of crisis, one of the leader's first jobs is to connect themselves, himself or herself, and the folks that they work with and their teams with mission, right? So our mission and purpose is a big part of how we drive forward as leaders. And so you see our mission over there, and which is to make people's work more valued, productive, and fulfilling. And just know that when we do stuff and when we show up, we're always anchoring our work and the way we do our work in that mission. And there's some training opportunities. Everything that we talk about in this webinar is covered in a particular class called the Certified Agile Leadership Training, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar. So Audrey led us interactively, thank you, Audrey, in an introduction to to both Roland and myself. I do also want to mention that a particular focus over here that I'm going to bring out in this particular webinar. And that is, not only have I been working as an Agile consultant and an Agile leader of my own company, but I've also been involved with the Agile Movement for coming up on 20 years. So this is like the 20th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto, and it's a big deal in the industry. And I want to offer some perspective when we get to the engineering part of our section over here about how I've seen the Agile movement evolve and why I'm really heartened and happy that we're returning to some of the core principles of Agile, especially when it comes to engineering. Roland, do you want to add anything over here that you feel particularly moved to do?
Well, I think that, as our Agile work has evolved over the decades, Sanjeev just talked about engineering, and that it's great to see the renaissance of engineering again. It's coming front and center, and we'll talk more about that later. But another area where we've done a lot of work and had to do a lot of work is at the portfolio and level and above. How work comes in, how it's budgeted, the governance and the controls and the financials, and all of that kind of stuff has had a big impact on how some of our clients are able to deliver, and that's an area that's been another strong focus of ours, especially lately.
Okay, thank you, Roland. So jumping straight into our agenda for today, what we want to do today is to share some thoughts and some practical thoughts, because that's kind of our ethos here at Lightspeed, about how we see the importance of innovation in this current pandemic era. And then we want to leave you with 3 keys, or cover these keys of customer-centric lean mindset, lean portfolio management, as Roland mentioned, and the engineering part that I mentioned. We'll have some time for discussion interspersed, so please continue to put your questions out there in the question part of the chat. And we'll also definitely leave a buffer of questions towards the end. But I want to kick off with a word about each one of us as people, right? So in the middle of this current crisis, we are definitely facing extraordinary times, right? We didn't choose these times, the times chose us. And what we have to do, both as individuals and as leaders, is to figure out an appropriate response, right? So if you are living in the United States, since March, everything shut down. We have some of the largest number of COVID cases here in the United States, and we've adapted. As human beings, we're remarkably adaptable, right? So personally, we've adapted. What that means is Roland is presenting from the office alone. I'm presenting from my home office. You're probably joining us from your home office or your office, maybe in a solitary type of fashion. And I want to thank you for that, because it's meaningful to us that you have taken some time out of your day to come and join us as we go through this journey together. I also want to say that, or recognize that you could be dealing with a personal situation where you have kids in the house. I got 2 kids in the house, and they're sort of got their distance learning going on. You got a pet in the house, and just be sort of comfortable as we go forward, right? That's at the personal level. As leaders, those of us who are leading organizations and larger types of efforts have a double responsibility, right? And maybe it's quadruple in terms of carrying the organizational burden. And the organizational burden is not only do we have to sort of figure out what to do with ourselves and our families, but we have to think of our extended families at work and extended communities. And so you see that from this slide, this is a slide from McKinsey, and the next couple of slides are going to be from McKinsey. So appreciate the McKinsey folks putting out this amazing and valuable information. But from this slide, it shows that nearly 75%, 3 out of 4 executives agree that the changes brought about by COVID-19 and the pandemic crisis will be a big opportunity for growth. We know this, we recognize this, all right? And so we say, okay, well, we understand that there are things that we should be doing right now that will help us in the future. Well, the reality is that we may not actually be doing those things, and they might not be hitting our radar screens because we're overwhelmed, right? So we feel perhaps ill-equipped or not quite equipped to deal with these challenges, maybe because of our personal situations, because of our business situations. Maybe making the pivot to virtual has taken a lot of time and is sort of consuming our energies. We're putting that fire out. Maybe we got VPN problems. You got these operational things that are taking our attention. But it is definitely important, and it definitely behooves us to look ahead to the future and figure out what we need to do. So we'll sort of bring this back to a particular set of things that what we would like to do, or we would advise you to do in the Agile space. But look at this slide. It says the commitment to innovation has decreased with that focus on short-term issues. Innovation has gone down, mergers and acquisitions down, sort of okay, organizational health, efficiency, core stuff. We are being consumed as leaders by the tactical and perhaps neglecting the strategic, right? And that's a big mistake, because if you look at this chart, historically, companies that invest in innovation in a crisis, and remember, all crises will end, right? This too shall pass, we know that. So when we emerge from the crisis, it is very important to understand that the actions that we take today will help us in the future. So significantly, right, what happens is that historically the companies that invest in innovation in times like this, in the middle of the crisis, outperform their peers in the futures when the recovery comes, and they really outperform by a significant level, right? So that sort of sets us up to talk about what it is that we as leaders, and within that segment of leaders, we as leaders in the Agile community need to do. So these are the 3 keys that we want to talk about: developing a customer-centric mindset, talking about lean portfolio management, and a culture of Agile and DevOps excellence. Let's start with the first one, because lean, that comes to us from Toyota by way of the Toyota production system, is all about fundamentally understanding and connecting with our customers. So anything that we do in the Agile space should ultimately be linked back to that lean fundamental. So let's talk about a couple things that we can do. And I'm going to play a video here, and as the gentleman is speaking, I'll recap his points on the slide. So here we go. So to set this up, what you see on the screen over here are some of the fundamental elements of lean: just-in-time, Jidoka, Haijunka, and standardized work, and Kaizen. And if you've been around in the Agile movement for long enough, then you know that Agile methods are a manifestation of lean product development. So from that perspective, it's lean manufacturing and lean design applied to product development. The bullet points in red are the ones we're going to cover, but we offer this slide as a reference for you to take forward and say, all right, if I want to align with my customers and employees, and I want to offer innovative products and services with the minimum waste, then I should go out and check out the larger body of work from lean. All right, but let's talk about this particular thing about connecting around to our customers. Right, and here's our video.
Tatarklubben is gathered at Kødbyen in Copenhagen, and today's topic is customer-centric lean. I'm joined now by Samuel Porter, who is the head of branding and design at Danfoss. You talked a lot about customer-centric lean. How has that helped Danfoss prioritize and make money?
I mean, for us, customer-centric lean, it really comes back to making sure that we have the voice of the customer in everything we do, knowing where in the value chain we are in relation to the value that we're trying to create for the customer at the end of the day. In the innovation, for example, that's really about bringing fact packs, insights into everything before we get started and too far down an innovation process, and really making sure that just everything that we improve is because it's going to improve something for the overall experience for the customer.
You also talked about connecting the brand to the growth strategy. How are some of the ways that you've done that?
I mean, for us, it's very clear that, in markets where growth isn't just happening every day organically, you really have to be very selective in where you're going to put your branding dollars and your bets on the table. And so for us at Danfoss, we're working very systematically to be better at identifying where are our growth opportunities. And the same goes for our branding, is to follow that same lead and make sure that we're investing in the best opportunities and supporting where Danfoss feels it has the best opportunity to get growth and profitable growth.
How can you ensure that the customer is at the center of your branding strategy?
Yeah, by using the customer, by talking to the customer, by relying on the insights that are being generated by the company with the thousands of sales guys we have out there every day, the CPS or customer perception studies that we run, loyalty scores, net promoter scores, and really making sure that we build fact packs and build business cases based on what the customer has said and asked for. At the same time, balancing that with what we believe ourselves, and what we think will be the best outcome for our company and also to create value for the customer.
Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
All right, a short video, but packed with advice and very valuable advice in my humble opinion. What the gentleman said is make sure that we have the voice of the customer, right? So if you're doing Scrum, then this is not just our product owner, but our end users and our end customers. Know where in the value chain we are, where are we innovating, and then bringing our customers and their insights into our process upfront before we start any innovation. Now, the last step is also very important because he says balance what the customer asks for with what we ourselves believe that we need, right? So this is not just doing what the customers tell us they need, it's doing what we believe they need as well, right? So it's balancing the sets of insights that we get from our customers with the insights that we ourselves bring to the table as product managers and product sponsors and product owners, right? So that's the sort of basis of customer-centric lean mindset. I want to pause there and see if we have any folks who are doing this today. So how are you? Pop something in the chat if you're doing customer-centric voice of the customer type thing, come to customer perception studies. Are you reaching out to your customers? And if so, please pop it in the chat and let's see if you guys are doing some of this stuff. We'd be interested in that. We certainly do a lot of it. So I'll pause there and see if Roland has any comments to add. We'll take a little look.
I think before we dive into the next section on portfolio management, and while we get some wait to get some input from the crowd, I wanted to maybe talk about a couple of things we're seeing trend-wise in the industry. We spend a lot of time with a lot of different customers in a lot of different industries, and yet we see trends really across those industries over and over and over again. Over the last 3 or 4 months, people have said, we need to be able to respond faster. Okay? We have to spend less, and we need to have a greater business impact than we've been able to have in the past using our past methods. And never before has that been as important as it is now. It's always been important, but right now it's critical. Respond faster, spend less, have greater impact. And what that means, though, is that folks have started to question how we do portfolio management and even the whole project model. Something we hear from our customers over and over again now is we need to pivot from project thinking, which is very rigid, fixed scope, fixed time, fixed budget, all that kind of stuff, to something much faster and flexible, more of a product mentality. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And those have impacts to portfolio management, the kind of work we choose, how we sequence it, and even what work it is we're managing. What is the unit of work if it's not a project? So we'll dive into some of those topics in this upcoming section.
Take it away, Roland.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so we all know from our lean thinking that we need to manage WIP. It's sort of one of the fundamental notions of the whole just-in-time inventory management model that we see in manufacturing and from the Toyota production system. By limiting WIP, we can improve quality, we can improve speed, and we can cut our costs. And this has been shown over and over and over again. Toyota continues to be, why Toyota? Why do we focus on them? They're amazingly profitable is why. They're able to charge a premium against their competitors for their products. Their quality is good enough to garner vast public support. And they're able to do this with incredibly low cost, and they're able to do this on a global scale, right? So this is what we all want. We want high quality, great customer satisfaction. We need to do that at scale, and we need really low cost, right? And one of the fundamental things around that is managing WIP, not trying to do too many things at once, right? And we're all used to that idea within a particular, let's say, an Agile project, that we only want to work on a few user stories at once or whatever it is, get those done, and then deliver the next batch. But we don't do that at the portfolio level. Still, to this day, amazingly, 20 years later, we still see organizations with way too many projects going on at the same time, all competing against each other for the same resources. You're creating this huge gridlock and logjam of projects that are all dependent upon one another, and none of it can move forward. And the result is massive amounts of spending, huge time delays, and very little delivery. And so we need to take the WIP management ideas and patterns that we use at the individual team level on our Scrum teams and apply them at the portfolio level. Fewer projects going on at the same time. The projects that we approve are more tightly focused, they're more narrow, get something done quickly, and they're properly resourced so that they can actually have the resources that they need to get things done sooner rather than later. So that's one of the things, is really focusing our attention on the most important things. So how do I focus our attention on the most important things? Well, we can use the ideas of this customer centricity to help drive our thinking. You see in this little Kanban board on the right, you see the usual, cards, pink and green cards, but to the left of that, there's some text, and it's been blurred purposely so that you can't read it. But those are strategic goals. Those are objectives and key results that this organization has laid out. It says, we want to, this quarter, we want to achieve X. And to the right of that, you see the very specific cards and features that we're going to try to deliver that we think will help us achieve X. What they're doing is really cutting down their WIP. They're focusing on just a few things that are going to try to achieve a very specific business outcome in a very short time frame. And it's this a focus that allows us to get the speed by managing WIP and being very clear about what it is we're trying to do and when. All tied back to customer needs, as mentioned earlier, through the customer-centric lean discovery. All right. Now, when you talk to customers, they're going to ask for everything under the sun, right? Be that your internal customers or your external customers, you're going to get a long laundry list of stuff that people say that they want and need. Now, the classic projectized way to do this is, to be honest, I think a little bit of a disaster. What we usually do is take everyone's requests and put them into a project scope document of some kind and fund that, and then demand that this project deliver all of those features, right? And we will often ask customers, what percentage of the software that you deliver either goes unused or has really low utilization by your customers? You spent all this time and money and effort to get it out there, and guess what? No one really clicked on it. We do these sort of polls with our customers all the time, and the numbers are shocking. On the good side, on the positive side, some of the better organizations that I've done this with have said 30% of our work is totally wasted and no one actually uses it. And I sometimes see numbers as high as 60%. 60% of the software we put out there doesn't get used very much. Huge source of waste. Incredible, right? To imagine that 30, 40, 50, even 60% of the money we're spending is being wasted. And I believe the projectized model drives us down that path by being very rigid and saying, here's all the things everyone asks for, you must deliver all of these. The project mentality has taken over as being the central thing that we care about. And we've lost sight of how do I get stuff, the most valuable stuff to our customers sooner rather than later? And how do we save money so that we can survive this pandemic crisis that we're in? Okay. There are features that are economic winners. People use them, they provide great value, and they don't cost a lot for us to build. Those are the economic winners, and we want to accelerate those. There are features that are economic losers, right? We spend a huge amount of time and money on them, we put them out there, and no one uses them. We want to avoid building those, right? And so how do I figure this out though? Which features are the economic winners and which ones are the economic losers? Well, there's this very elegant and somewhat simple tool called WSJF, or weighted shortest job first, that allows us to do this. It very elegantly allows us to say, I think these features have a lot of benefit for very little ROI. I think these other features have very minimal benefit for a huge investment. Let's try to not do those. Now, if I can combine that mentality of feature level economics with the notion of lightening up the rigidity of our project management, saying, you know what, the goal is to achieve a business outcome, not to deliver every feature in this list. I combine those two ideas. I'm able to deliver only the most impactful features. By limiting our WIP, I have a lot less work to do. I can focus on those. The quality can be greater. The speed of delivery can be faster. And the value that we get back can be greater. It's a very powerful combination of ideas, but it requires that we lower the rigidity of our project model at the portfolio level. And you can see down in the bottom right here, just an example scoring. This is from a real client of ours. I've taken the actual features off. You can't see what the features are, but we've given scores to business value and time criticality and job size, and try to come up with the features that we think are the economic winners, and trying to avoid the ones that we think are the economic losers. It's really a key to being able to spending less, delivering faster, and having greater impact. You can go, Simon. Next slide.
There's the last.
Yep.
Are you seeing this slide?
There I do. Okay. So in order for this idea to work, we need to change the unit of work, the unit of focus, from being the project to something smaller granularity of delivery, MVPs, MMPs, capabilities, features. You call them whatever you want to call them, right? But it's, the idea here is that I actually don't want to deliver everything in this project. I want to deliver the most impactful stuff, right? And changing the unit of work, what we value, to being the focus and delivery of these MMPs or MVPs. So what I'm going to do is take our big projects, chunk them down into something smaller, sequence those through this notion of feature level economics. Which ones are the most economically viable, right? And I want to do those first. And the ones that are really high cost and are questionable or dubious value, I'm going to do those later, or maybe not do them at all, and get my teams to focus on the valuable stuff and get that out the door now. So what we're focusing on is value delivery, as opposed to getting every feature in this project scope thing done. Right? That is another sort of a key idea on how we have to change the focus of our portfolio management systems and measurements and approaches to being value delivery, right, over scope management.
So to sum it up.
All right. So in order for us to spend less and deliver faster and have greater impact, we want to put in WIP limits and limit not only the number of projects that we're doing at a time, but also within a project, really focusing on those features that have the greatest economic impact. How do we know what that greatest economic impact is? It's through this prioritization that we're going to go through using WSJF that allows us to sort of match up the value that we think we're going to get from a feature against the cost that we think it's going to take for us to deliver it, so that we can have the greatest impact. And then I want to sequence my work into teams in that order, and that's going to allow us to get the highest value, lowest cost stuff out there right away. And we need to restructure our portfolio management systems to not only enable that, but maybe even enforce that, as opposed to scope management.
So thank you, Roland. And I see from the chat that Dana, they are indicating that they're with a member organization, and so they have advisory groups comprised of members who are consumers of the products and services, and they're bringing them into the conversation. But perhaps more importantly, at that organization, they're aligning the entire organization towards products. And that seems to be another trend or leading trend in the industry, where we not only focus on the the economic winners in terms of features, as Roland mentioned, but we align not only our teams towards those value streams, but the value streams themselves are aligned with what our customers need, right? So first of all, we discover what our customers need, and we, from that customer-centric basis, we sort of realign the entire organization. So that's something that we're seeing as well. So if you're doing something like that, please put in the chat. And Roland, as we get ready to transition, any thoughts on how some of the larger macro level things that are happening in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another trend we're seeing as we talk, and this is across multiple industries. This notion of sort of value stream thinking, it's coming up a lot, and it's gaining a lot of popularity. Right, and the idea is, I think we know from Agile that if we have a small cross-functional team, that they can become very high performing. Right, and I want to keep them together. Well, what if I expand that notion and go further upstream? What if instead of limiting that idea to your canonical Agile team, that I start to bring in higher level business analysts, UI, UX, product management, product ownership, product strategy, customer product marketing into this mix? And if I go further downstream and maybe bring some of the operational components in, I almost have like a little company all the way from very senior level business to data and operations, all focused on this one product or this one service. They stay together, they focus on that kind of work, and they become great at it. They become world-class at it, and they're stable. And because they're stable, they're able to learn how to work with one another, how to communicate with one another, how to get stuff done, right? And I don't want to break that up. And I can organize these value streams around various customer experiences or products if you have actual products. Sometimes people will focus them around customer journeys or customer touch points as well. And it's a very, very powerful idea. What I talked about earlier with WSGIF and MMPs was sort of the process way of attacking speed and agility. And then value streams is more of a structural way of dealing with it. How can I organize the people better so that work flows through our organization with less friction?
Thank you, Roland. And I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing a couple comments, one by Dana again, where they qualify that this is a work in progress, and in their organization, they still have the PMO and that model. And let's see, Mara indicates that they have varying levels. Sorry, that's not. Mara indicates that, they want to know whether we have a case study for a project to product focus. And I want to combine both of those and let you guys know that the three of us, Audrey, Roland, and myself, are working on a book right now. And the book covers our novel organizational construct that we call the Agile Value Management Office, or Agile VMO for short. And what we have laid out in that book, and of course also some webinars, you can actually go to our website and check out some of the Agile VMO webinars, are best practices or patterns from those case studies. So we've spent the last 3 to 4 years working with a number of large enterprises, helping them pivot from project to product. And this organizational construct that we have, that's the Agile VMO, combines that, combines the responsibility for middle management in particular, and then that's our PMOs and other organizations like that, and moving them into a value leading role within an organization as we transition from project to product.
So I would just add to that, I don't know if I'm necessarily at liberty to give client names, but we've worked with three Fortune 500 firms in the last, 2 years, I would say, implementing these very ideas. I mean, we're telling you today about the experiences that we've had actually implementing these ideas. So this isn't us presenting the ideas untested, they've already been out there. We've seen the results of them, and now we're sharing them with the broader world. One of our client organizations, we got about, I want to say 67% improvement in what they call business velocity, combined with a 15% improvement in cost. Another group went from delivering to production a few times a year to now delivering they would say hundreds of times a year, right? And so these ideas are very impactful. They do work, and they are tested, and they are becoming industry trends.
Okay. Thank you, Roland. Let's segue to our next section, which is creating a culture of Agile and DevOps excellence. And I want to take you back a little bit in time over here, and this is sort of to the early genesis of the Lean movement, right? So if you look at Lean, the Toyota production system, it came from Toyota after, this is post-World War II, where Edwards Deming worked with Taiichi Ono and Shige Shingo to create this management system that's now called the Toyota Way. And fundamentally, there are some interesting things that are part of that overall system, but I want to focus in on this particular thing that they call Jidoka, or automation. So some years ago, and I think Roland was also part of this trip, we did a company trip to the Toyota factory in Kentucky. And it's pretty amazing when you go and you do a tour of the factory, and you see this very high level of automation. You got robots pounding out, the metal and really taking these things, and a huge focus on the single point of work, or sort of one piece flow, if you will, right? And not only do they have a very high level automation, but that automation is seamlessly blended with human effort, right? And so that word over here is that conglomeration word of automation is a Toyota invention that says, let's get a high degree of automation, but let's make sure that it has a human touch. And so if you go into a Toyota factory, you're going to see robots and machines and all this stuff, but always very seamlessly integrated with human effort. And always with a sort of an overarching drive to maintain quality, right? So this was Deming's big thing, quality. It was the quality improvement cycle, plan, do, check, act. And Deming was of the belief, and Toyota certainly plays that out on a day-to-day basis several decades later, that if you want to go fast, in Agile, we're all about fast. We're talking about business agility, and speed is a driving factor. But Deming and the Lean proponents said, you cannot go fast unless you pay attention to quality. So if we want high speed, we must have high quality, right? So here is a short video, and I'm going to play that, and then we'll talk about how it applies to our engineering side.
The originators of lean production also invented the concept of Jidoka, or quality at the source. Instead of implementing quality control inspections at the end of the assembly line, as was traditionally done, the lean production concept emphasizes the importance of maintaining quality at every stage of the manufacturing process.
One of the things that we've done that has been helpful to us is to allow people in a manufacturing process to stop the process if in fact there's a quality delivery or issue that prevents them from making a good product. We found that they are reluctant to stop the line, but once they learn that having stopped the line doesn't get them in trouble, you can make a significant improvement in quality by fixing the problem that they identified.
All right, so very fundamental concept. And as we move to the next slide and sort of move back into the present, I want you to sort of make a stop on the way. And the stop that I want you to mentally make on the way is, if you have been a martial arts practitioner yourself, or a musician, or you have kids that have done martial arts, then you know that practice and deliberate practice is the key to success, right? So yeah, let's take the martial art analogy, whether it's from Aikido, because some of the Agile stuff is based on this idea of Aikido, and the concept of practicing our discipline with deliberate practice and deliberate focus, right? And really making sure that if we're doing software development, that we pay attention to that as well. So I want to sort of take us back a little to a higher level and say, when we talk about the Agile movement, it's not just one sort of huge movement, if you will. And there are at least 3 different areas that we're looking at. One is the operational agility or operational agile, and that's Scrum. How do I get a team stood up? There's going to be 3 to 9 people in there. What kind of meetings do I have? I have a sprint planning, I have a sprint review, I have a daily Scrum. Operational agile is Scrum and extreme programming if you're doing that, or Kanban. In this meeting or this webinar, we're also addressing some of the strategic aspects. And so there's a strategic agile, and we're talking about applying agile to strategy. Roland talked about objectives and key results and OKRs and doing feature monetization. Those are aspects of strategic agile. But fundamentally, neither of those, either strategic agile or operational agile, can stand without a foundation and a basis on agile delivery, and that's agile engineering. So from that perspective, we have to go back to the future. And I remember before the Marvel universe, there was an XP universe. If you guys remember that, there's the extreme programming universe. And this is a set of conferences that were started. And back in the day, there were folks like Bob Martin and still around, Jim Shore, and they talked about improvement and engineering excellence. So today, our question is, how can we improve our engineering excellence, which is really the foundation of both operational agility and strategic agility? Our martial arts analogy over here talks about a coding dojo or a DevOps dojo. Now, what is a dojo? In martial arts, we use the term dojo as a place of the way. So just like we have a Toyota way in terms of building quality, when we apply that philosophy of deliberate practice to agile engineering, then we bring in this concept of a dojo. And whether it's a physical dojo or a virtual dojo, the dojo is something where we come together and where teams come together, specifically agile teams come together, and engineers and testers and anybody else who's involved with these things that you see over here: automated builds, refactoring, multi-level testing, pair programming, and then microservices type architecture. A coding dojo or a DevOps dojo brings those things together as a deliberate practice. Now, there's a particular format that we don't need to go into over here. It's a fast-paced applied practice, but if you're a leader and if you're not investing in agile engineering, please consider doing that right now. Because without a foundation of agile engineering, your operational engineering and your strategic engineering will not have a foundation, and therefore it'll be a house of cards, right? So we have to make sure that if you're doing product development, we need to make sure that we have very good automated build, CI/CD type things, and we need to have a really good practice of agile engineering. So, extending agile engineering with DevOps and DevOps automation is also part of the dojo. And it's something that we have to understand, that if we want to respond quickly to the market, if we want to be lean-centric, if we want to have the neat stuff of the funnel and lean portfolio management, we won't be able to deploy any of that stuff, and we'll come to a screeching halt when it comes to that deployment piece without DevOps, right? So without putting in place a discipline that we can develop in our DevOps and coding dojos of developing and testing close to production, deploying frequently. Roland mentioned some of our customers who were able to ramp that up by 10x in terms of how frequently they were able to deploy, but also continuously validating the quality of the stuff that we put out. So there's nuances to this. Within DevOps, there's something called telemetry, where you put in measurements and you put in sort of metrics, and you're measuring how well you're doing. But the bottom line is there at the bottom, right? We won't be able to deliver quickly to our customers as lean-centric as we are, even if you're doing the lean portfolio management, unless we're able to get this DevOps stuff. So coding dojos and DevOps automation, if you're a leader, please consider investing in them today, and making sure your teams are equipped not just with operational agility, Scrum process, but also delivery expertise, right? Invest in the agile engineering with the coding dojos, and then of course continue to invest in extending your agile engineering with DevOps automation. So we'll do the same thing over here, Roland, and see if you have anything to add as we sort of tie this up and bring it home?
Well, a couple of times I've mentioned that, we're active in many industries and we get a lot of data from we have a fairly good idea what's going on out there, I'd say, through all of our many customers. And this is engineering thing is something that has come full circle, I would say. In years past, people came to us a lot saying, I want to transform our culture, or I want to do big agile transformation. I want to move our organization agile thinking and agile behavior and agile mindset. And, that's all still going on. There's no doubt. But something that's been coming up more frequently lately is, everything's gone online. And we just have to deliver now. And so there's been a renewed focus on engineering capability, engineering delivery, engineering practices. That Agile kind of started off with a lot of that stuff, and we're seeing it come full circle now. Just the speed and rate at which folks are having to respond to various crises that are going on out there, be they COVID or wildfires or political unrest or whatever it is just forcing this constant need for speed, and engineering is certainly a key part of that.
All right, fantastic. So, to pull it all together and to wrap up, the 3 leadership keys or agile leadership keys that Roland and I want to share with you today are to develop a customer-centric lean mindset, focus on the customer through measurement, to going out, talking to advisory groups, doing sort of customer innovation interventions, enabling our flow with lean portfolio management to make sure we're picking those economic winners and not picking or deleting those economic losers. And then fundamentally making sure that we have this foundation of Agile and DevOps excellence at the Agile delivery level on which we can build operational agility and strategic agility. So if you want to learn more, if you want to connect with us, please check out this slide, and if you want, we do have lots of stuff out there for free, micro workshops, webinars, articles. If you just go to lightspeed.com toolbox, you can check that out if you have a few minutes and a few time, and a few minutes of your time to go check out the free stuff. If you want to invest more in yourself and you want to learn some of this stuff, especially if you're a leader and you're facing a challenge in terms of taking your organization forward, we do have a complete new set of classes. This is the Certified Agile Leadership Series. The Scrum Alliance has recently rebooted these, so we have a newly designed classes fresh for the sort of pandemic virtual era. And we really, in those classes, we really focus not just on organizational transformation, as you've learned over here. We also focused on personal transformation, because each one of us as leaders, as I mentioned, is dealing not only with our personal circumstances, but our organizational circumstances as well. So we want to make sure that we connect with other folks and other leaders and be able to connect you guys in a network with other leaders. So please do check out our certified leadership classes, and I'm going to stop there.